Hello, welcome, or welcome back. Please have a seat. We're about to begin. Warning. The Ember and Ink Studios are not responsible for ruining your childhood. Proceed with caution. These stories are told for entertainment and historical curiosity, but many of them come from a time when fairy tales were not written for children. They were warnings, passed down through generations. Tonight's story is one of the darker ones. Long before fairy tales were softened for children, these stories were darker. They were tales of betrayal, revenge, strange magic, and sometimes terrible justice. In the early 1800s, the Brothers Grimm traveled across Germany, collecting these stories from villagers, travelers, and storytellers. What they preserved were not the gentle bedtime stories we know today. They were the original versions, forgotten, unsettling, and sometimes shocking. Welcome to the dark origins of fairy tales, the versions they never told you. What is a fairy tale? When most people hear the words fairy tale, they imagine magical kingdoms, heroic princes, and happy endings. But the earliest fairy tales were very different. They were part of oral folklore, told around fires and kitchen tables long before they were written down. Many of these stories were meant as warnings about the dangers of the world, strangers in the woods, deception, and betrayal. In the early 1800s, two German scholars named the Brothers Grimm began gathering these stories from villagers across Europe. What they recorded were not gentle bedtime stories. They were dark, strange, and sometimes brutal reflections of life in earlier centuries. This episode explores one of those lesser-known Grimm tales, a story about trust, danger, and a bride who discovered far too late what kind of man she had agreed to marry. Fairy tale fact. Many of the Grimm stories share a common warning. Not every smiling stranger is who they claim to be. Stories about murderous husbands, dangerous lovers, and forbidden rooms appear across European folklore. These tales often served as cautionary stories about trust and survival. The story you're about to hear belongs to that tradition. Series 2. Episode 1. The Robber Bridegroom. There once lived a miller who had a beautiful daughter. One day, a wealthy man came to visit and asked for the girl's hand in marriage. The man was well dressed and spoke politely. To the miller, he seemed respectable enough, and so he agreed to the match. But the girl herself felt uneasy. There was something about the man she could not quite explain. Whenever she looked into his eyes, she felt a chill. Still, the wedding was arranged. One day the bridegroom told her she should visit his house in the forest, so she would know where she would live after their marriage. He gave her directions, but as she walked through the woods, she noticed strange things along the path. Birds sat in the branches above her, calling out warnings. "Turn back! Turn back! Beautiful bride!" But she continued walking until she reached the house. The place stood alone in the forest. No servants, no welcoming lights. The door creaked open when she pushed it. Inside the house, everything was silent. In the center of the room stood a bird in a cage. The bird cried out, turn back, beautiful bride. This house is full of murder and crime." Fear began to creep into her heart. She searched the house and eventually found a cellar door. Inside the cellar sat an old woman. The moment she saw the girl, the old woman whispered urgently, "You must leave this place at once. Your bridegroom is not what he seems. He and his companions are robbers. They bring young women here, kill them and steal everything they have." The bride trembled. Before she could escape, footsteps sounded above them. The robbers had returned. The old woman hid the girl behind a large barrel. Through the cracks, she watched as the robbers dragged another young woman into the cellar. The poor girl cried and begged for mercy, but the robbers paid no attention. They murdered her and began cutting the body apart. As they worked, one of the robbers sliced off the girl's finger, and the ring she wore flew through the air and landed behind the barrel, right in the bride's lap. Terrified, she clutched the finger tightly, but the robbers noticed the missing ring and began searching the cellar. They came closer and closer to the barrel. Just as they were about to discover her, the old woman shouted that the ring must have fallen into the straw. While the robbers searched the floor, the old woman quietly helped the bride slip away. Together they fled into the forest. The next day the bride returned home safely. Soon the wedding day arrived. Guests gathered for a great feast. As the bride sat among them, the bridegroom asked her to entertain the company with a story. She agreed. "I will tell you a dream," she said, and she began describing the house in the forest, the caged bird, the cellar, the murder, the severed finger. The room fell silent as she spoke. Then she placed the ring and the finger on the table. "This was no dream," she said calmly. "I saw it all." The bridegroom and his companions tried to flee, but the guests seized them. Justice quickly followed, and so the bride escaped the terrible fate that had awaited her. Please don't leave yet. We have another story. We know you'll really enjoy it. Fitcher's Bird. There once lived a powerful wizard named Fitcher. He would disguise himself as a poor beggar and travel from house to house. Whenever a young girl opened the door, he would seize her and carry her away to his house. There he gave her a key and an egg. "You may explore every room in the house," he told her. "But one room must remain locked. If you open that door, you will die." Curiosity soon overcame each girl. They opened the forbidden room. Inside, they discovered the bodies of other women, dismembered and piled in the corner. Fitcher would return, see the blood on the egg he had given them, and know they had broken his rule. Then he would kill them as well. But one girl proved clever. She opened the forbidden room, discovered the bodies of her sisters, and secretly restored them to life. When Fitcher returned, she hid her sisters safely away. Then she tricked the wizard into carrying baskets that he believed held gold, but actually contained the rescued girls. Finally, she disguised herself as Fitcher's bird and escaped the house. Later, when Fitcher and his companions returned for the wedding celebration, the house was set on fire. The wizard and his accomplices burned inside, and the sisters were free. Many grim stories carry the same warning. Not every house is a home. Not every promise of marriage leads to happiness. And sometimes the most dangerous place in the forest is the place where someone invites you inside. In the next episode of The Dark Origins of Fairy Tales, we explore the grim story of the godfather Death. You may try to deceive fate. You may try to bargain with death. But in the end, death always collects what it is owed. If you think you know this story, you might be surprised by what the original version contains. The Ember and Ink Studios would like to thank you for listening to this episode. If there is a dark, grim tale you would like to hear explored in a future episode, please leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing, turning on notifications, and giving the video a like. That way you'll never miss the next journey into the darker side of folklore. Until next time, remember, the stories we grew up with are rarely the ones that were first told.